This is a production of World Video Bible School. To God be the glory.
Hello and welcome back to another class on learning to use the Greek New Testament. Today we'll be talking about various reading aids. As we study through the Greek New Testament, and as, for example, if we were just to pick up a copy of the New Testament and begin reading a section of Scripture that we're working on for a Bible class or for a sermon, and maybe we're not quite confident in our Greek, as is the case with many students and preachers. We know some of the words, but maybe not all of the words. Maybe we've forgotten some of the paradigms, or as you're reading, you come across a word that, as we have seen in previous lessons, really has gone through a lot of morphological changes. Its form changes, its stem changes, depending upon what tense it is in and so forth, or what is preposition has been prefixed to that particular stem. And so it might be a little difficult to just sit down and take a copy of the New Testament and begin reading through and knowing maybe how best to translate each word, or maybe even what that root word is. Particularly when you come to the epistles of Paul, there are a lot of times a word in the New Testament is used by the Holy Spirit through Paul that's only found one time in the New Testament. It's called a hapax. And so as you come across that word, maybe you didn't learn it in your vocabulary cards, and you say, well, what is that word? I'm not sure. How could you find out in a quick fashion? What aids are there available to you to sort of read along, to hold the Greek text in one hand and this aid in the other, to be able to read through and to quickly parse a verb or a noun, to figure out what case it's in, that noun, or whatever the case may be? What aids are available to us? Well, the first one is one that I'm certain well aware of, and that is known as the interlinear. And an interlinear really comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes, but what does it mean? Well, an interlinear is the Greek text, and in between the Greek text, in between the lines, hence the word interlinear, you have an English equivalent or translation, all right? And then in some interlinears, over to the side, you have the English translation, a particular translation like the American Standard or King James or whatever, just as you would find it in any Bible in its syntactically correct order as far as our language is concerned. But in an interlinear, you have just the Greek text, and then you have right above the words a translation of that word. And so you sort of have a translation within a Greek text. And for example, if you were to take a look at this one, we've seen a picture of this before, but you can see that if you were to look closely at this or any interlinear, that the English words are in between the lines, and so you can sort of see the Greek words, and you're reading along, and then right below it, or right above it, is going to be right below it is going to be the English translation of that. Okay, and remember, that is a translation. Doesn't mean that is exactly what the Greek word is, and this is the final authority, as some people sometimes think with interlinears. Remember that an interlinear with the English words is a translation in and of itself, and it's subject to misinterpretation, subject to a change or a particular word that the author might utilize of his own particular predisposition or presupposition, rather. So you have different interlinears. This one is based on the Nestle Aland Greek text. Remember the discussion in our last session. And then there are interlinears. For example, this one, the interlinear Greek English New Testament. Okay, and I'll open it up here so you can see the first page by George Ricker Berry. And this one happens to be based on the same text type principle or Greek text of the Textus Receptus, the received text. And as you open it up, you can see on one side there is the English translation, the King James translation, and then here is the Greek, and then right below it an English word-for-word translation. So you could use this to sort of help remind you what those words are as you go along and study through the Greek New Testament. Now, I used to have a Greek teacher that used to tell us, not to use those interlinears because they become a crutch, and where you really don't learn the text like you should, or the Greek words. And I think that's true, but sometimes when we have to do something quickly and maybe we're not sure about a word, it's maybe easy to just pick that up and to use it, especially maybe for beginners. So that's one aid that you can utilize in helping you read through the Greek New Testament. All right, another example, as you will see now, are our linguistic keys, So we've talked about interlinears, and now linguistic keys. What do we mean by that? Well, a linguistic key is simply, just as its name implies, a key to the various words, not all the words, but some of the words in the Greek text. And what you do is you open it up just like you would a Bible and turn. It's in its canonical order as far as the books are concerned. And you go chapter by chapter, and they'll have chapter 1, John chapter 1 for example, and then verse 1. And then under verse 1, they'll list some of the more difficult words or more unusual words in the text and give you a brief definition. Sometimes they'll parse it for you. Let's take a look at an example of this book, get a close-up shot of it as we go to John chapter 1. Okay, now notice here that this is a portion of chapter 1 of the Gospel of John, and that it's laid out according to verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, and so forth, right? And so if you had a copy maybe of the Greek New Testament in one hand and this in the other, you're reading along, and maybe you come, for example, to the word arche in your Greek New Testament, and you say, well, what does that mean? I can't remember. Well, you could look here, and there he gives a definition, okay, and refers to the period before creation and so forth and what it may mean. All right, well, again, you come back here and you run into this word ain, and you say, what does ain mean? And you read that in your Greek New Testament, and then you looked over here, and he's got it. It's an imperfect of the Greek word eimi, which is a to be verb. Eimi means I am. Ain means was, okay? And the same thing you can see as you go along here. Agenata, all right. Well, here's an example. Pros with the accusative means with God. And what he has done is simply taken from the works of many different people, lexicons, various commentaries, and periodicals, and various books that have written about or spoken about these words. And he's assimilated them into one particular book. So as you read along through the Bible, you can read verse by verse along this way. Again, some of the more, it's not going to have all of the prepositions. It's not going to have every time an article is used or whatever, but certainly even defines theos, okay, for God. And so sometimes he'll parse these for you. You get down here to verse 3, hutos, and it means this. And so you see it's sort of a key then that will help you and aid you as you read through the Greek New Testament. All right, again now, this just to give you a glance at the title, The Linguistic Key to the Greek New Testament by Fritz Reinecker and Cleon Rogers, and Regency Library, or the Zondervan publisher rather is the publisher. And so it's a multi-purpose tool that I think you can use from a lot of different vantage points, again, as sort of an aid to reading, defining parsing a word for you. It also serves as sort of a lexicon, and in some instances a commentary. And so it's a good thing to have as you're reading through the Greek New Testament, to have this in the other hand, to read those simultaneously, or to have one there rather, to aid you when you stumble on a word or maybe to have a hard time figuring out what it means. All right, so that's an example of a linguistic key. Another example of a linguistic key, in a sense, is this one by A.T. Robertson. It's a rather older, more respected series of books, and laid out, again, pretty much just like the linguistic key that we looked at a moment ago. It goes chapter by chapter, verse by verse, just talking about some of the phrases and giving you a definition, maybe some references and so forth. And this particular one is called Word Pictures in the New Testament, again by A.T. Robertson, published by Baker. So it's a type of linguistic key. It's not it's not as condensed as this one is, as the linguistic key by Reinecker. This is one volume. This one actually is in about 5 or so volumes. So at any rate, those are some different linguistic keys. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the analytical lexicon. Analytical lexicon. All right, now think about that title, the analytical lexicon. A lexicon is a dictionary. All right, it defines words in any particular culture or era of time, rather, and the analytical part of that is, just as you might guess, it analyzes those words. Now, it's not a dictionary in the sense of dictionaries that we're going to look at in following lessons where they give you a great deal of information, maybe about the etymology and so forth. But what an analytical lexicon does is this. It looks at every word in the Greek New Testament, in whatever form it's in, and lists it here for you. And then, following that word is a sort of, it gives you the basic elements. It parses that word and tells you what its root is. Okay? For example, if you were looking at, let's go to a particular passage in the New Testament. Let's go to John chapter 1 and take a look at it now on the screen. John chapter 1. All right, so let's say that we're reading here in verse 5 of John chapter 1, verse 5, kai ta phos ente skatia phine. And we come across that word phine, and we say, well, I know what skatia means, darkness. Phos is light, so in the darkness, and the light in the darkness, and then phine, what is that? Well, here's something very important. If you were to look up phine in a regular old Greek lexicon, you would not find it in that form. You would not find it. In a regular Greek lexicon, you would see the word phino, but you wouldn't see phine. Okay? And or even if, for example, if we went back and looked at this word right here, katalaben, you would not find katalaben as such in a Greek lexicon. And the reason is that because this is not the present active indicative first person singular. Those are the forms that Greek lexicon will use as the first in looking up the actual word. All right. Now, if you were to look up phine, you would get pretty close in a lexicon, and you think, well, that's pretty much it. But if you didn't know your endings, you couldn't know for sure. And if you didn't know your root, you couldn't know for sure. And so you think, well, what word do I look up in the lexicon? Well, an analytical lexicon can help you look up that word, phine. If you look up the word phine, it would tell you exactly what it is and what word to look up in the Greek lexicon. All right, let's go and take a look at that now. So if you opened up that analytical Greek lexicon and looked up the word phine, for example, it'll be in alphabetical order. You're going to see that it would also list all the different occurrences of phine and how it's, every time it's used, whether it has a second person plural ending or whether in this instance third person singular. Okay, here it is in the third person singular present subjunctive. Okay, you have to kind of stop and think about, well, that word is found in a variety of ways, isn't it? But you're not going to find all of these forms in the way that it's used in a particular lexicon. It's only going to use, if we go back over to phine, we could see, we ran across this word, right, in reading John 1:1, or John 1 in that chapter, and we came to this word, and we said, well, what is that word, and what person is it? Well, it's third person, so he, she, or it, right? It's third person singular, present indicative. All right, well, what's the root? It is the root phino. This is the word right here that you could then look up in your dictionary. Okay, that's the word you could look up in the dictionary. And this ID just means every time look above, all right, or before, and you get to the word there. So here it is. Here is how phine is found, or phino is found in the different forms in the New Testament. So it lists every form or every particular conjugation that is found in the New Testament. Okay, it won't list, if it doesn't use if phine or phino is not used in the second person plural, for example, it will not be here. That form will not be here. All right, so that's what an analytical lexicon does for you. It analyzes the word, tells you what root word it is, so you'll know what word to look up in your dictionary. Of course, the best thing to know is that just memorize those endings. Oh, that's an A ending, third person singular of fine. There's my stem, so I know that's phino, and I can look up phino and so forth. But sometimes we may forget the paradigms, and you can use this as a reading aid. So that is an example then of an analytical lexicon. Okay. Let's talk a little bit then about one last aid that is very helpful, of course, if you do have access to a computer, and that is the computer programs that are available. Now, we don't have time in this program to talk about all of the available software packages that can be purchased, but there are numerous ones. And for example, if you were to go to eSword on the internet, you would find some information about various programs you could download. Some are free. And then there are Bible software packages that you can purchase that I think have some very good search engines on them and do a lot of things for you as far as analyzing words and helping you in studying through the Greek New Testament. And of course, there's no substitute for really learning those words and becoming familiar with them on site. But sometimes we need help, and then maybe if we're just starting out and we really want to dig into the Scriptures, and a computer program can really help us to do that. What I'd like for us to do now is to sort of take you through just a quick series of things that could be done on a computer in looking up one of these Greek words. And the computer program software package that I have is called BibleWorks 4.0, BibleWorks 4.0. All right, let's take a look at the screen now as an example of what I'm talking about here on this particular program. All right, notice here how this is laid out. We have a place here to type in the scripture that we want to study, and then up here we have some windows available for giving us where else the particular verse or word is used, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Then you have over here a place for the text of the Bible, and you can put as many of the different translations as you want to in this particular window. And as you can see, I have the KJV, the ASV, the NIV, the NAS, the NAU, RSV, NRS, and the New King James. And then I have a couple of, if I can scroll down here a little bit and just show you, I've got also a few of the different Greek text on there as well. Okay, and then notice on this Greek text, it also, in a sort of coded fashion, will parse some of those words for you. Okay, tell you that's an article and nominative, singular, and so forth, right? And here's theos for nominative, it's masculine and singular as well. And then down here in this window down here, there's sort of a running screen on wherever you move your cursor to give you a definition of the word. So let's go back up here to this window, and we're going to type in the passage that we want to study, which is John chapter 1, and we're going to go to verse 5, and I push return, and the screen changes over here so that I get to see John 1:5 in all of these various English translations. Now, there's a couple things I can do. As I'm reading along the English translation, I move my cursor. I don't know if we can get a little wider shot of this or not, but let's see if we can get a wider shot. And notice that as I'm moving my cursor, notice down here that in this window that window is changing depending upon the word that I'm got the cursor on. So there is the word for darkness in English, and scatia pops up down in the lower section. Notice the screen change when I move over to comprehended in the King James, which is from the word kata lambano, and so forth. Okay. Now let me go down a little bit further, and maybe we can get a close-up of going through the Greek words on here. If I move my cursor along here, and I see that I've got my cursor on kai, I look down in this lower section down here, and I see kai, that it's a conjunction, okay, a coordinating conjunction, and then it gives you a definition, and you can scroll down on this thing and get some more information, very detailed information. Okay, go back up here to kai. No, that's an article. See how the screen changes as well on my article as I move my cursor. See, it's going to define it here. Okay, as an article, nominative, neuter, singular. So it parses it. Go to phos Phos, nominative. It's a noun, tells you it's a noun, nominative, neuter, singular, okay? And then if you look down here a little further, it gives you information. It means daylight or light, okay? And we do it all the way through, okay? Then one of the great things about this particular program as well is that let's say that you want to focus on, let's just use the word fine here. We can open up this window, click on that, open up the window, and I go down here and I say, let's do a search on where else fine, or let's do this, a search on all forms of the root. I click on that, and then I go back up here, follow my cursor back up here, and look what happens. Shows me all the places where that word phino is used. So if I just click, I can click on Matthew 2:7, automatically my screen changes over here, and I see then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star, okay, appeared, and there's the word phino. It's appeared in English, but it's the same Greek word as what we were looking at a moment ago as the light shined, okay? It appeared here, translated appeared. So very interesting. Now we can go back over here, and I can see that word phino, as that word is used there in only one time in that form. All right, then phino used in this form is used 5 times, and it lists all the scriptures of how it's used. So a very versatile tool, very versatile, very helpful in a lot of ways. I go back over here, and same thing. You see, I put it on a word like the word sun, and then I come back. Actually, I have to keep it there, and I click on this to kind of hold it for me. And then I come down here, and there's the word huios. Give me a good definition. I can open up this window. I can go to various Greek lexicons, like the UBS dictionary, the Eugene Nida and Lowe, and Liddell and Scott is the one that I have running now. So very, very helpful, very quick way to get around and to look at some of these words as an aid for studying through the Greek New Testament. Very helpful tool. So if you are able to purchase one of those or know someone that has one and would like to go over to their house or to the to the church building or wherever, I would encourage a congregation to buy a good computer program like this if you're not able to afford one for yourself. Good. Again, there are some that I think you can download from the internet for free. All right. Well, those are then some examples of the kinds of things that you can use then to help you when you're reading through the Greek New Testament. And as we conclude then, after talking about these lexical or these reading aids, let me just say this, that those aids are tools. And as we continue to talk about in future lessons about some of the books and reference materials that are out there available to us, that we do need to consider them as tools. Certainly we can just study the Bible and know what we need to do in order to go to heaven by just studying the Bible and to live faithfully to God. But what the tools allow us to do is to get quickly at something in a little faster, easier way, to be able to access the wealth of information that has been assimilated by or assembled by others, and to have access to their years of study and work. It's so beneficial and right at our fingertips to be able to access this information very, very quickly. And let me just say that these tools need to be thought of as a way to perhaps expedite our study. You know, if you were working on an automobile or an engine of some sort, and you had a particular screw that you were trying to untighten, and if you just used your hands, it would be difficult. You could do it if it were loose enough, or if it were way down deep into the engine, like for an example, an automobile way down there, and there was a screw that needed to be loosened. If you had the right tool, a long screwdriver, then you could get at that, and it would be a lot easier and a lot quicker, wouldn't it? If you use the right tool for the job, then you're able to get things done much faster and in a very good way. The same thing is true with the many Bible tools that are out there. They're just simply tools. They're not inspired, but yet they are tools that allow us to sort of quickly get to something, that aid us in maybe more efficiently in terms of our time, arriving at the answer of a particular meaning of a word or whatever, or in aiding us in reading through, as for example, as we have done today, the Greek New Testament. Well, that concludes this lesson for today. And in the next session, we're going to talk about how do we define a Greek word? What tools can we use in defining a Greek word? And what if we don't have many lexicons? What can we do on our own to define a word and letting the Bible be its own best commentary? I look forward to being with you then. I hope that you'll join us again in that next session as we talk about defining words. Until then, I bid you a very pleasant good day. It's been great being with you, and may God bless you richly.